Hello Internet, in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a sitemap for your website. Now a sitemap is basically a document that looks just like this, and it's used to allow search engines to better find your content on your website and basically index your website for you so that your websites will come up more frequently on search results. And so basically the file layout is as follows. You'll always have this at the top of the website, and you will also have this at the bottom of the website. And each URL on your website is going to be contained within these tags right here. So this is one entry for one website, and this is another entry for another site, still on your website, and yet another entry. So basically the job of our PHP script is to create this document and dynamically insert these entries for us. And we can do that by transversing through our entire domain and finding every file ending in PHP or HTML, whichever you prefer. Okay, so for the actual script, we're going to begin by defining a couple of HTML tags, basically the head and the body, and we're going to create a form at this time. Okay, so the form is very simple. Basically, it does is create a username and password form, and upon clicking the submit button, we're going to submit this form back to this PHP file, and at that point we'll start creating the sitemap. Okay, next we're going to actually begin writing the script that's going to generate the sitemap, and we'll first begin by defining a couple variables that we'll be needing. The first one is basically the complete path to your web server's user accounts. So basically the directory for where your site lives on the web. And of course you're also going to have your domain name, which is all these are going to be combined together to form one long string. And file data, this is going to be basically the documents. Okay, so we're gonna, each time we find a file that we want to insert into this XML document, we're going to basically join it and add it to this string right here. And more on this in a bit. Now let's create a function that's going to be the workhorse of this entire script. What it does is takes two arguments. One is going to be the path that describes this entire thing right here, plus each individual file. And then of course we're going to have the file name itself without the complete path right here. It's just going to be like example index.php, while this will be slash hsphere localhome your accounts dots slash index.php. And at the same time, we're going to make these same variables over here global so we can reference them inside of this function. Because anytime you enter a function and define another variable, even though if it has the same name as over here, it will not point to the same data. So we're just going to make these global. Because the script is going to walk through your entire web domain and it's going to find every single file on your web domain. There are some files that you want to exclude. And so we're only interested in PHP files. In my case, you may be interested in .html or whichever the case may be. I'm only interested in PHP files, so therefore I'm going to search for only PHP files with respect to this path variable. And so here, if I find a path with this basic name in there and it has the extension .php, I'm going to go ahead and start processing and combining it to the document that we're going to write later, the file data. First of all, by replacing this phrase at the beginning of our path variable and replacing it with a typical URL. Here I'm just going to display it for visual purposes and add it to our file data. So review, this function just basically works to keep informing the file data of the files to add to this document. Next is an equally important function, and that's called trace directory. This function is going to go to the directory specified at this point, and from there it's going to loop forever trying to find every single directory, every single file on your web server for the purposes of writing all the PHP files to this XML document. So basically what it does is open up the directory here, and it's going to close it off when it's done at this point. And anytime it finds another directory, it's going to do a recursive call. So as part of finding every single item inside of each directory, we're going to loop, and I copied this directory from PHP's home site, so you can look at it there. But at the same time, it's going to read each directory's entry with respect to this handle right here. Read everything inside of this directory, print it out, while ignoring every directory that begins with dots or dot dot. Under Unix, these represents the current directory as well as the previous directory. So we're just going to ignore those. And at the same time, we're going to update the path information. So this will be, if you have directory path was equal to this variable right here, this value right here, and the entry is equal to file1.php, the result would be this. And here we're going to send this new path information over to our workhorse to add it to our PHP. And over here, we're going to send up the variable to print this out to our XML doc for the sitemap. And next, here's where the recursive call comes in. We check to see if this new path information here, as indicated here, we check to see if it's a directory itself. And if it is a directory itself, we're going to repeat calling this function, and it does the same thing over and over again. And that's it for the function. The last bit of code to do is to actually process this document. We begin by making sure firstly that the user actually did submit the form to the script, and we do that by checking to see if the create map, which is equal to the submit button's name, we check to see if it's defined or set, and if it is, we go ahead and continue with our execution. Next, we want to make sure that only administrative users can create a sitemap from your website, and we do that by checking the passwords, and of course you want to set these appropriately to whatever your password actually is. And if the password is correct, we go ahead and call our function to start tracing through the entire web domain, file entries and directories. From here, after this function is done executing, our file data should be initialized with all of our file entries for our website. And at the end, of course, we have to add this tidbit as we see here. And the only thing left is to write it to the file and then close the file. And that's all there is to writing a sitemap generator. From this point, what you can do with the sitemap is to go to your Google web developer page and inform Google that you want to upload a sitemap. Well, thank you for watching this tutorial. As always, please remember to subscribe and rate this video. Thank you.